Hey friends, I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Ssemanda, the intuitive psychiatrist, and we're listening to Stepping into Soul Power. Friends, we are in this life, on this planet, doing hard things, and one of those things is bringing up the next generation. Kids don't come with instructions, and we want the best for our kids, but sometimes it's hard to actually materialize this and help our kids step into their soul power. Our next guest is an educator. She's a consultant, speaker, nonfiction author who blends this perfect heartfelt guidance on child development with years of teaching and working in administration and helping to support families and schools. She is passionate about doing the right thing, not only for herself and her family, but for the community at large. Rosemary Olender, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
You've got the book and a lot of experience, and you talk a lot about emotional richness. What does emotional richness mean for kids, and how is it different from emotional sensitivity?
Well, emotional richness means that, my signature talk is put your wallets away and raise rich kids, because to raise children that are rich in character traits that will serve them well going forward doesn't require any money at all. And so when I talk about rich kids, I'm talking about children that you help become resilient and independent and confident and happy. And with those traits, they can handle what life throws at them much better than if they didn't have some of those characters and some of those qualities in them. This whole journey that I'm on now, and why I am so focused on this, started 40 years ago. My father was dying. He was in the hospital. I had spent probably 2 weeks there, hours every night with him. And the last night that we had together, he said to me before I was due to leave to go home, he said, Rosemary, before you leave, because he knew he was at the end, he said, I want to apologize to you and your mother and your sister for leaving you with nothing. And it was like an arrow in my heart. I thought, what are you talking about? I said, do you not understand how rich we are for having had you in our lives? And he said, but I'm leaving you with nothing. The house has no marketable value. The car is a used car and on its way out, and there's no money in the bank. And I said, Dad, those are not the things that make one rich. Tony and I won the lottery the day we were born to you. We were blessed. You gave gifts to us our entire lives that made us who we are today, made us successful, made us be able to handle some of the negativity and stuff that has been thrown at us as we've grown up. And he didn't understand what I was talking about. So I said, let me explain. So he said, before you do that, go down to the cafeteria and get a cup of coffee and come back, which is why my book is titled Coffee and Wisdom, A Father's Legacy to Leading a Rich Life. Because from when I was a child, when I was little, my father would come into my room and say to me, Rosemary, are you done with your homework? Are you ready for bed soon? And I say, yeah. And he'd say, come in the kitchen, have a glass of milk and some cookies. Let's talk. That became a nightly ritual, Monday through Friday, every night. When I turned 12, I switched to coffee, and then it was coffee from that night on. And even the night before he died, I got my coffee. He wasn't drinking any, but I got my coffee and we talked. And what I explained to him was that the gifts he gave us were non-monetary, that they didn't cost anything. They weren't tangible things I could hold in my hand. They were things that he talked to us about, showed us about, discussed with us, and he had conversations with us about. And he said, like what? And I said, well, first of all, your presence, not the kind of presence you wrap up and give to somebody, but your being, you're there. You've always been there. You've you've been a guiding light and a rudder in our lives that has shown us the way to being a good person, to being a successful person, to being able to handle adversity. So that was one. And then I talked about things like his humor, his sense of humor. In the book, what happened was that was 40 years ago, and I was working, so I didn't have the time to do much with it. And he passed away, by the way, the following morning. So that was the last conversation we ever had. I worked until COVID. When COVID hit, I said, this is the time for me to write the book as a tribute to him. That's what it was meant to be, a simple tribute to my dad that I would give to family and friends so that they would remember him, because he meant that much to me and to them. And so I started writing the book. And as I started writing it and pulling my notes that I had collected over the years, reflections on my life with him, reflections on my life in my school situations and how they related to what he talked to us about. Now, keep in mind, my sister is 13 years younger than me. So I went to college the day she started kindergarten.
Wow.
And he had two different generations, really, almost, but he treated her the same way. He was no different that many years later. But I pulled together what I thought were 12 valuable traits that I know sustained me, sustained my sister, and I watched sustain the children that I served through 5 decades of teaching and administrating.
I wanted to ask what your top three would be of those 12.
Okay. All right. I will tell you the top three. The top three, and that's interesting you say that, because several people have asked me that. Well, which are the most important? I mean, obviously presence is very important, but let's talk about the one I think is probably the most valuable skill a kid or any individual can have, and that is the gift of humor. My father was a wonderful man about adversity. He had a sense of humor that could take the worst situation and make you laugh, make you sit back and say, how do I think my way out of this? Because in the book, the way the book is structured is each chapter is a different gift. The start of the chapter is a discussion of why that is so powerful, why that trait is so powerful in development and in emotional intelligence. And the gift of humor is the power of it is absolutely that it diffuses tension. It lightens the mood. When it does that, it allows you to step back, reflect, stay calmer, and think. Okay, you can think more logically. You can think more analytically. How do I get out of this? My father always felt that negative situations were an opportunity to figure out why it was happening, what was going on, what you could do differently. So humor is like a steam pipe, just letting some steam off so that things can flow more casually. It makes the process more enjoyable, and it helps build the resilience we so badly need today with all the negativity around us and all the bad things that are happening to us. So I would say humor was number one. The
Okay.
second one that I think is really critical is the gift of honesty
Mm.
and trust, and they go hand in hand. And the reason they're so powerful is because trust is the basis of all relationships. And honesty breaks trust. So if you break that trust, it hurts the relationship. And if you teach your kids early about that, they're less likely to lie to you. I mean, they might lie about little things. No, I didn't spill the milk, but they're less likely to lie to you. I never wanted to lose my father's trust, ever, because he was my champion. He was the guy who protected me and kept me safe. And if he lost trust in me, I would lose that. So
Yeah.
I think honesty is one of the most critical ingredients in communication. You lie to somebody, all bets are off that they're going to believe you when it's really necessary
Needed.
that they believe you, right? So I think honesty is a key one. The third one is patience, I would say. And the reason patience is so important is because patience helps you build stamina. And again, what is it we want kids to be able to do? They need to be able to tolerate difficult situations. We want them to have some stamina to get through situations, even good situations. You know, you're going to do a major concert. If you play an instrument, you got to have some stamina to get through it, you know? So it's helps you to have some delayed gratification. It teaches you, I mean, think about the world today and how fast it's moving and how fast I mean, since we've gotten the internet, you send an email, you expect a response within an hour. You know, we have to learn, and then we get all kinds of angry feelings when you don't hear from people because we've got this expectation. And if you have
Yes.
no stamina at all, you're in trouble. If you have no patience and you are a kid or an adult and you want something, you have no patience to wait for it, you get into financial difficulty because you put it on a credit card. I don't want to wait. So patience is really one of the key ones too. What I try to say in the book is the 12 of them together build a powerful bundle that will set the child up for a productive and successful life for sure. Much higher odds of them being successful than if they don't have some of these things. And these are things that parents can give easily. I have some tools and strategies. One of the things I talk about is the 3 pillars of intentional parenting. You know, I talk with parents about doing 3 things. One is to observe consistently your children.
Mm.
Pay attention to your kids. Observe what they're doing, what they're saying, what their likes are, what their dislikes are, what their anxieties are, what their hopes and dreams are. And keep in mind, no 2 kids are alike. So you really have to departmentalize and say, okay, Johnny, this is Johnny, this is Susie, and make sure you understand all 3. So observing consistently is important. The second pillar is to listen actively. And that's crucial. And what that means is there's a difference between hearing and listening. And I'm sure you've experienced it when you've talked to someone and you go, you're not listening. I heard you. There's a difference. Listening means when you're actively listening, you make eye contact, or you face the person, let them know that you're with them. It means you put the phone down
Yes,
and
please say
listen,
it. Like,
you know,
yeah.
right? Or the newspaper. In my father's day, we didn't have cell phones. He was always reading. But when I would come in, he would put it down and say, how was your date? Or how was your night? Or how was the day? And he would talk to me. And the other part of active listening is you reflect back what you hear. So they know you've heard it and really listened to it. And you ask questions. So the second pillar is listening actively. And I think probably the biggest criminal to that is all of our devices,
Yeah.
our computers, the television being 24/7 now. When I grew up, we had 3 stations. At 11 o'clock at night, the TV went off. There was nothing on it. Now, our attention is divided all the time. Oh, that soccer match is on at 2 in the morning. You're thinking about, it's constant. So we have
Yeah.
to put the devices down. And the third pillar is model, and it's probably the toughest one for us. It's to model carefully what you want your children to be. Because more than what you say to them and tell them they should do, they're going to watch you do it, say it,
Yeah.
or be
Yeah.
it. So if you're the
Exactly.
kind of a person who is kind and generous and you're willing to step back and let others go forward, they will too. But if you are negative and condescending and you're constantly judging people, they will be too. So, and these are things that you can do and get more comfortable with. And I have some tools to help Parents understand the difference between active listening or just listening, and also how to deal with different kids. Some kids won't make eye contact. Certainly, if you have some children that are on the spectrum, eye contact is not what's going to happen. And teenagers, they often don't want to look you in the eye, but you want to make some eye contact just to say, hey, I am here and I am doing this, and this is important. But getting back to the whole thing about having some humor, my dad wasn't the kind of person who stood up in a room and told a joke. That's not the kind of thing he did. He took actual situations and made people laugh when they ordinarily would be falling apart or screaming. I have some in the book. After I talk about why the gift is important, I have reflections, which are actual stories that occurred in my lifetime. In my dad's lifetime, I had some stories my uncles told me, and then I offer some suggestions to parents. It's really kind of like a guidebook. Okay, so if you want to do some of these things, here are some ideas. For example, with humor, one of the things that happened was that my uncle purchased his first brand new car. He had always had used cars, and he had his first car that was brand new. So he got into washing it every day, which was crazy. He'd take it out and he'd come home and he'd want to wash it because he was so proud of it. And I can understand why. But he told us the story when my dad was there, about how one summer, the summer after he got it, I don't know, probably in April, but in August, there was a drought. We didn't have any rain. And the mayor said, no watering your flowers and lawn, no washing cars. You can't do it because we need to conserve water. And my uncle was like really stressed and fretting about it. So my father said, well, we have a river that runs through our town. Let's just go down to the island and we'll back the car up to the river and we'll use buckets and we'll wash it. We can do that. So my uncle said, okay. So they did. Off they went. And they got to the river and they backed it up. My father was in the passenger side. My uncle was driving. My father jumps out and goes around. My uncle backs it up and backs it up. And it slid down with the back wheels into the water.
No.
My uncle is screaming and my father is laughing like crazy. So my uncle says to him, how can you stand there and laugh at this? And my father said, I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at your facial expressions. And he said, it's okay. And my uncle's like, how can it be okay? And my father said, well, for one thing, and this was what my dad did. He was always a glass half full kind of guy. First of all, it didn't float away. It didn't go more than the back tires into the river, so it's not damaged. Because my father had a gas station at the time, have a tow truck. We can pull this sucker out and we can bring it to my gas station and we can wash off the back end of it there. Case solved.
Okay. So in Texas, it floods a lot, especially in the Houston area. And I've actually
Yeah.
had people close to me almost drown just
Yeah,
driving on the street.
I've been in a car in Arizona where there was a flash flood and we were on a hill and the water was rushing down and the car just started to float down the hill. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, this was just a standing river. We had a drought. The ground was dry. It's just that near the riverbed, it was soft sand. And so it sunk and it went, and my uncle forgot to put the emergency brake on. That's what did it. And it kind of went down, but it got caught on the rocks on the edge of the river. So it didn't go all the way in, but it did get stuck and they had to get a tow truck. But that's the kind of thing my father did. He would laugh. One time my sister was going out with her friends. She was in high school and she told me the story of how she went to him and said, Dad, can I borrow $20? I don't have any money right now. And we just want to go to, I don't know, one of the local ice cream places or something. So he handed her the $20. And as she's walking out the door, he's like, bye bye, bye bye. She goes, Dad, what are you doing? He said, I'm saying goodbye to my money because I know I'm never going to see it again. That's the kind of humor he had. And people appreciated that, especially when they were in trouble. And that has served me well. There have been times when we've had some big problems and we kind of laugh about it and say, oh, okay, I mean, as long as you're not hurt, of course, there is some limits to that. But the gifts are so powerful to give kids. Another very, very important gift that as a teacher and as an administrator over the years that I have seen is that children need routines and traditions in their life. And the reason they need those, the power of those gifts, is that they help a child to feel grounded and part of something bigger than themselves. They're just one piece in a bigger picture. And it helps them feel more secure. Because when you look at behavioral issues that kids manifest, and you start to dig deep and look at what is causing misbehavior, there are two critical elements that will cause misbehavior, will cause us as adults to behave terribly. Terribly. The first one is that they feel that they have no control over anything. So think about the times in your life when you have felt, I can't stop this. What do I do? You start to panic. You start to do things you might not want to do. You make choices you probably shouldn't make. Kids are the same way, except they tantrum because they don't have any control, and they need to have control. So one of the things I tell teachers and parents is if you want your kids to do something, give them some choices on how to do it
Yeah.
so that they feel they have control. You can do your homework. Parents will say they must do their homework when they get off the bus. And I had kids who rail against that. And I'll say, well, wait a minute. For your child, school is very hard. For them to go home after 5.5 hours and do another hour and a half is next to impossible. If you could schedule a routine where they come home, they have a snack, even 30 minutes. If you're not going to eat dinner for an hour later, even 30 minutes with a couple of cookies, something, and then do your homework. Then do your homework. Again, another kid, oh no, I'm off that bus. I want the homework done so I can enjoy my night. We're all different. So move it around, but do the routine. Give them choice with it. The second reason kids really start to spin out and don't know what's going on is when they really don't know, they can't predict what's going to happen. They don't feel safe. They don't feel secure. They're unsure of what's in front of them. I had a child one time in first grade. He was 6 years old. Mom and dad got divorced. The judge made the decision for equal custody, which was great. Both parents were great and the kid wanted to be with both, so that was great. However, in the judge's infinite wisdom, he decided that the kid would go one day with mom, the next day with dad, the next day with mom, the next day with dad. After 2 weeks, that kid was out of control in school because he didn't know whose house he was going to at the end of the day. And he was fearful. He couldn't predict what was coming. And think, again, as an adult, think about the times in your life when you couldn't predict. The anxiety level just goes way, way, way up. So we need definitely to make sure that our kids have that. Routines help that. They can predict what's going to happen. It's Monday night, and on Monday nights, we have pizza. It's something that simple. They can predict it. We have a lot of traditions and routines in my life that I grew up with. One of the traditions I've established in my own home with my kids and then my grandkids is that Thanksgiving weekend is the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend is the day we decorate our Christmas tree. My kids did it, and then my grandchildren started doing it. And my youngest grandchildren now are 14 and 18. Okay. So this year,
Yes.
I sent them each a text and I said, hey, we're going to be here for Thanksgiving dinner. Are you still interested in doing the tree on Friday, spend the night and we do it Saturday? Or do you want to just skip it because you're older? And I get it. I understand. And we can do it. Within 5 minutes, I got a response from each one of them, and they weren't together, saying, "What are you talking about? We do this every year." I have pictures of
Yeah.
every year of them in front of the tree they decorated. And the reason we did that is because my daughter is so, she says she's OCD, but her tree is perfect. Everything's perfectly spaced. So the kids don't decorate it. So I started letting them decorate mine. I said, we have a kids tree. They can put anything anywhere they want. And as they got older, it got even better. But they count on traditions. The thing that it does, though, they're part of a bigger family. It's not just,
Yes.
and family can be anybody. It can be friends who have become very close to you, and they're part of the community, the tribe that you have built for your children, which is really incredibly important for them to have.
I think that's really great. Like having traditions that help strengthen relationships. I think that is makes a lot of sense. I think that's core. I did want to ask, what about, because a lot of us, we are also on this healing journey as parents, right? Parents who have gone through all kinds of different things. And so, what I wanted to ask is, how do you raise these emotionally rich, healthy children when you yourself, you're still healing?
That's an excellent question. And I guess it depends on where you are in your journey of healing, really. I mean, you absolutely have to take care of yourself. There's no question. You have to do that. But if you can, the Japanese have a term called compartmentalization. They compartmentalize. And so let me think back to the time I had my mother and my father living with us. Both of them had terminal cancer. And my daughter was 14, my youngest son was 12, and my older son was going off to college. It was a very difficult time for me emotionally, very difficult time. And very difficult for me to give my kids time because my mother needed so much attention and caretaking, as did my dad. My husband and I sort of split up how we did it. But what I would do is I would just compartmentalize. So I would make sure that I would take my children and talk with them. Conversation, communication, and connection is where it's all about. And talk about their feelings. When my book came out, I was so saddened by the fact that so many people told me that they did not have that kind of relationship in their life with their parents. Either their parents never asked them how they felt about something, never asked them why they thought what they thought, and all of that. And they just were like, I'm going to start doing this with my kids. And I have some friends who were pretty abused and pretty, came from situations that were not terribly good. And we talked about this. We talked about compartmentalizing and giving your kids what you would have wanted, what you think is missing, what was missing in your life. And what I'm finding from a lot of people who have read the book is conversations and connections, strong family connections. In
Yes.
the 1980s, a group of researchers did a longitudinal study on resiliency, talking about healing. Okay. They took 100, it was a decade long study. They took 100 adults who had made it. And by that, they didn't end up in jail. They didn't end up on drugs. Or if they had ended up on drugs, they got off of drugs, whatever. But they were settled in their life. They had jobs. They were productive, etc. Every single one of those 100 people came from terrible childhoods, abuse, neglect, abandonment, you name it, drug use, alcoholism. So the researchers started saying, well, why did these 100 people make it when others ended up in jail, robbing stores, killing people? Why did they make it? So they asked them. They conducted lengthy interviews with all of them and said, why? How did you get out of that mess? Every single one of them said the same exact thing. Every single one of them said, I had a significant adult in my life who let me know that I was important, that I could become anything I wanted to become with if I put my mind to it,
Yeah.
that I was special, that God put me on this earth for a reason, and I just needed to find what that reason was. So every single one of them had one or more significant adults. The interesting thing is that 87 out of the 100 reported that it was a teacher.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Teachers matter.
So,
They
oh,
make such a huge difference.
absolutely. And I would start my faculty meetings with that statistic, beginning of the year when I would meet a new faculty. I would start meetings out when I did workshops with teachers. I started every workshop out with that statistic. And then I would say to them, so if you think that you don't make a difference in an individual's life, think again. But with that responsibility comes incredible power, or with that power comes incredible responsibility, and you don't have the right to destroy anyone. Tread carefully and make sure you uplift every child you serve, because it will make a difference. And that's why you're here doing what you're doing. So I think it's important that for people that are healing, if you can say, okay, part of the healing process is to determine, again, my whole life and my father's way of teaching us was to get to the root cause of things. Why is this happening? Why did this happen? Okay. And he would take a conversation and peel it like an oven, like an onion. He wouldn't say, if he said to me, how was your day? We would start out that way. How was your day? I would say, it was okay. No, 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 no. What do you mean okay? Was it better than okay? Did something happen that upset you? So we would keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And it's important to do that. In the healing process, you have to you kind of have to do that same thing. You have to peel away the layers and say, what all is in this struggle that I'm having? When my father died, it took me 2 years to recover. It took me 2 years because I had lost my rudder. I had lost my best friend. I had lost the man who guided me so well my whole life. And I had seen from the beginning, from when I was young, that the kids, and I saw it as an administrator and as a teacher, has nothing to do with money. I had a dime for every parent who said to me, well, I know I can't give my kids what they really need because we don't have a lot of money. And I would say, stop.
It really struck me just how substantial that what the relationship that you had between you and your dad, and how when you lose some, or when they transition and they're not physically there anymore, it's almost like everything needs to recalibrate.
Right. It does, for sure. And writing the book, it was, like I said, it was 30 something years before the book got published. But I had him with me because I was taking notes and I was thinking about, okay, how do I keep him with me? And it's interesting because my sister hasn't read the book yet. It's been out for a year. And she said, I can't lose him again. And I said, Tony, read the book. I know the introduction is tough to get through. I said, just read a couple chapters, read them separately because they're fun. They're fun. It's just what my father gave us, and they're fun stories and all of that, interesting stories. But yeah, when you lose somebody, you are on your own journey of grief, and it's different person to person to person. And sometimes you don't even understand why you're grieving the way you're grieving. Some people do, and some people don't. But I think it's important that we don't really lose them. And this is what I say to parents. The most important legacy you can leave your children is not a pile of stuff. It's who they become.
Mm.
I am my father and mother. I have always felt that Tennyson wrote in the poem Ulysses, I am a part of all that I have met. I extend that too, and all that I have met is a part of me. So my dad is with me. He's here. And I also look for him and listen for him. And I can almost hear him in my ear sometimes saying, relax. You can get through this. You can do this. Because that's the kind of man he was. And so it's really kind of critical that if you yourself are grieving, if you can compartmentalize and you can say, all right, I'm grieving because, well, I was grieving my father, but when I was dealing with my children, I had to put that aside and I had to say, okay, I need to do what's best for my kids right now. I mean, I remember the day my mother died, we
Mm,
took our kids out for ice cream and laughed and all of that because they needed it, because they lost their grandmother.
yeah.
They were sad too, you know. So if you can do that, and a lot of it depends on where you are in your own healing journey, of course, you know, that's all kind of important.
Wow. Well, I know that our audience is going to want to connect with you. Can you tell us how they might do that?
Sure. They can Google my name, Rosemary Olander, and they will find a lot of podcasts and see what I've talked about in other places. They can also go to my website, which is rosemaryolander.com, and they'll get to my website, which has my book and has my contact information in it. And also, I'm going to be giving you a link that you'll put up when this gets put out there that will send them to a video I did in my calendar so that they can get a free half-hour conversation with me. And we can see if there's other ways they want me to help you, or if I can help them in that short time, that's fine. That's free. I'd be very happy to do that. So I think those are kind of the best ways to get to me.
Wow. Well, Rosemary Olander, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
If you haven't heard it yet today, I appreciate you. The soul in me honors the soul in you. If you'd like to see more episodes like this, please subscribe or click here. And friends, if this spoke to you, leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you.